Chapter 6. Echoes and Edges. Some mornings felt heavier than others. It wasn't always sadness sometimes, just a quiet weight in my chest, like the kind you feel before a storm. On those days, I would find myself staring at the ceiling a little too long, or pressing the snooze button just to delay being awake. Aiden noticed. He never said anything directly, but I could feel his eyes linger a little longer on my face, like he was trying to read the parts of me I hadn't written down yet. One Sunday, we went to the Tate Modern. I had mentioned once, offhandedly, how I loved the hush of art museums, how they felt like cathedrals where emotions hung quietly on the walls. He remembered. We walked through the halls, side by side, but not always talking. Sometimes we would stop and look at a painting for a long time without saying a word. I liked that about him, that he didn't feel the need to fill silence. There was a piece just bold black brushstrokes across a white canvas that caught me off guard. It wasn't beautiful in the traditional sense, but something about it spoke to me. It felt chaotic. Honest. "Do you like it?" he asked, his voice low. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I feel it." He nodded. Maybe that's what matters. We sat in the cafe afterward, sharing a slice of cake that was too sweet and 2 cappuccinos that weren't sweet enough. The afternoon light filtered through the windows, making everything feel softer. "I used to be scared of silence," I told him. Back in Warsaw, silence meant something was wrong, that someone was angry or leaving. And now he asked, "Now it just means I am not pretending." He reached across the table, his hand wrapping around mine. "I like your silences," he said. "They are honest." That evening, back in my room, I pulled out a notebook I hadn't touched in months. I began to write not for class, not for anyone else. Just for me. Words spilled out like they had been waiting, like they were finally ready to come home. And somewhere between the lines, I realized something. I wasn't just falling for Aiden. I was beginning to find myself again. Chapter 7. The Shape of Trust. Trust isn't a doorway you walk through, it's a hallway. Long, echoing, sometimes dimly lit. You don't realize you're in it until you've already taken a few steps, and suddenly the walls feel closer, the air heavier. I was somewhere in that hallway with Aiden. Things between us were still gentle, soft smiles, unspoken glances, small gestures that said more than words ever could. But beneath it all, a question pulsed quietly inside me. How much of myself am I ready to give? One chilly evening in late October, Aiden invited me to meet some of his friends. They were hosting a dinner at a flat near Shoreditch. Nothing formal, just food, music, laughter. It shouldn't have felt like such a big step. But I stood in front of my closet for almost an hour, trying to choose an outfit that said, "I belong here." "I'm okay." When we arrived, the warmth hit me instantly. People squeezed into a too-small living room, plates balanced on knees, the smell of garlic and spices filling the air. Aiden's arm brushed mine as he leaned in. "You all right?" I nodded, grateful for the way his presence grounded me. His friends were kind, curious, open, a little chaotic in the best way. I found myself laughing more than I expected, especially when Aiden told the story of how we met. He left out the part about my spilled coffee turning my notebook into a swamp of ink, and instead called it serendipity in a paper cup. At one point, someone handed me a guitar and I froze. "Oh no, I don't play," I said quickly. Aiden smiled gently. "She writes, though." "Beautifully." I shot him a look, but it wasn't annoyed, it was shy. Exposed. Later, as we walked home beneath a sky full of stars and distant sirens, he said, "You were amazing tonight." "I was terrified," I admitted, pulling my coat tighter. He stopped walking, turning to face me. "Zosha, you don't have to be fearless. Just honest." I looked at him then, really looked, and something inside me softened. I didn't say anything, just took his hand and kept walking. That night, I couldn't sleep. So I wrote. Not a story. Not a poem. Just the truth. I want to trust again. I want to believe that some people stay. That not everyone leaves when the light starts to dim. That maybe this slow, quiet blooming is real. And when I closed the notebook, I realized I was already halfway down the hallway. Chapter 8. The things we don't say. By November, the days were shorter, the air sharper. London had slipped into that in-between season, too cold for comfort, not yet magical with snow. I found myself chasing warmth in unexpected places: the corner seat near the library radiator, the steam from takeaway soup, the way Aiden's scarf still carried the scent of his cologne. We were closer now. Not in the dramatic, sweeping way novels describe, but in quieter ways: shared playlists, inside jokes, the way we reached for each other instinctively when crossing a street or walking into a crowded room. But there were still things I hadn't told him. One evening, I found myself staring at an old photo on my phone. Me and Marek, my ex, smiling at a summer music festival. We looked so young. So sure. That version of me felt like a stranger. Or maybe a shadow I hadn't quite shaken off. I didn't miss him. But I missed the version of myself who believed love was simple. Aiden noticed I was quieter than usual that night. "Want to talk about it?" he asked as we sat in my room, sipping peppermint tea neither of us particularly liked, but always bought anyway. I shook my head. Not yet. He didn't press. Just reached for my hand and held it gently, like it was something fragile and sacred. Later, as we lay side by side on my narrow bed, I turned to him. "Do you ever feel like you are still carrying pieces of someone else inside you?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Yes. But I think some pieces stay because they are meant to teach us something. About who we were. About who we don't want to be again." I looked at him, heart aching in that tender, almost beautiful way. "I'm scared sometimes. That I won't be enough. Or that I'm too much." He traced his thumb over my knuckles. "Zosha, you're exactly what you are. And that's enough for me." And just like that, the walls I had kept up began to shift. Not collapse, but move. Just enough to let him in a little further. I didn't tell him everything that night. But I told him I liked the way he made the world feel softer. That I hadn't written about anyone in years, and now I couldn't stop. That when he smiled, it felt like something inside me remembered how to bloom. He pulled me closer. And in the quiet that followed, I realized, sometimes the most important things do not need to be said. They're felt in the spaces between, in the stillness, in the way two people choose to stay. Chapter 9, Storms We Carry. The rain didn't stop for 3 days. It wasn't the romantic kind, the soft drizzle that made everything shimmer. This was heavier, relentless. The kind that seeps into your shoes and bones, that makes you feel like the sky has forgotten how to breathe. I didn't see Aiden much that week. We were both drowning in assignments, deadlines, sleepless nights. But something else lingered too, an unease I couldn't name. A silence that wasn't comforting this time, but edged with something colder. I tried to ignore it. Told myself I was overthinking. But my mind kept spiraling into all the places it shouldn't go. What if he was pulling away? What if I had let myself believe in something that wasn't real? On Thursday, I finally asked if he wanted to meet. He said yes. We sat at our usual cafe, the windows fogged up, the chairs mostly empty. I wrapped my hands around my mug, trying to warm my fingers and my thoughts. "You've been quiet," he said gently. I hesitated. Then, "So have you." He nodded. "I guess I've been in my own head. Midterms, family stuff." My dad called. Things aren't great back home. There it was, his storm. I reached across the table, touching his hand lightly. "You could have told me." "I didn't want to unload everything on you," he said. "You have got your own stuff." I smiled, but it didn't reach all the way. "That's not how this works, Aiden. We carry things together. Or what are we even doing?" He looked at me, then really looked, and the weight in his eyes made my chest ache. "I am scared," he admitted, "of needing someone too much. Of becoming a version of myself I've worked hard to leave behind." I understood that fear. I had lived inside it. So I said quietly, "We don't have to save each other. Just show up, even when it's messy." He squeezed my hand, his voice barely above a whisper. "I want to try. With you." That night, he walked me home in the rain. No umbrella. Just soaked jackets and silence, and something tender threading between us. And when we reached my door, he kissed me not like before. Not soft or tentative, but real, present. A kiss that said, I'm here. I'm trying. I'm not running. And I kissed him back with everything I had left to give. Because sometimes the only way through the storm is together. Chapter 10. Where the Light Lives. December came softly. The city changed. Lights glowed in windows, scarves grew thicker, and laughter spilled out of pubs like steam. London had become something else. Less like a question, more like a memory you hadn't lived yet. Aiden and I found a rhythm. Imperfect, but ours. There were still quiet days. Still moments when we both retreated into ourselves. But we always found our way back to shared cups of tea, to long walks without needing to speak, to the kind of silence that felt like safety, not distance. One morning, I woke to find snow dusting the windowsill outside my room. The world looked softer, cleaner. Like maybe, just maybe, things could begin again. Aiden texted, "Meet me in the park?" When I arrived, he was standing under the old elm tree near the pond, bundled in his gray coat, cheeks flushed from the cold. He smiled when he saw me, and suddenly I wasn't cold at all. He held out his hand. I took it. We walked slowly, snow crunching under our boots. I was thinking, he said after a while, about how we met. How something small, a spilled coffee, a napkin, turned into this. I smiled. The paper cup of fate. He laughed, then turned serious. I never expected you. But now I can't imagine this year, this version of me, without you in it. I felt something bloom in my chest. Steady. Unafraid. I don't know what comes next, I said honestly, but I want to keep finding out. With you. He leaned in, pressed his forehead to mine. That's enough for me. As snow continued to fall around us, the noise of the world seemed to hush. There was no grand gesture, no sweeping music. Just two people standing in a city that no longer felt like a stranger, holding on to something fragile and real. And as I looked at him, really looked, I realized something. Home isn't always a place. Sometimes it is a person. And in that quiet, snowy park, I knew this was my new beginning.